What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. Also, this podcast is brought to you by our sponsors, Pop Menu and The Giving Kitchen and Kickfin, and you're going to hear about them in just a minute. First of all, let's talk about today's guest. Hey, what's up, y'all? Just had a awesome, long conversation with Mike McFall. In fact, we're going to pick it up when he comes here to Charlotte because we had an hour and 20 minutes of conversation, and we have probably 2 hours more of stuff to talk about at least. Mike is a co-founder of BIGGBY Coffee. They just opened their 394th location this morning. He and his business partner have been doing this for 30 years, and it is a great story, and he is a great storyteller. He has written a couple of books. He has a third book in this series. Just so many things that we talked about that were thoughtful and inspiring, and I cannot wait to meet him when he comes to Charlotte. His COO is actually here in Charlotte, so he's going to connect us. We're going to have him hopefully on the podcast here in studio. BIGGBY Coffee, y'all. They're sort of Midwest based. So if you haven't heard of them, check them out. Incredible culture, incredible organization, great business they've built, and much more to come. So thank y'all for listening. As always, go and give us a rating, give us a follow, spread the word. Ratings and follows and subscriptions just get this content into more people, the more people that do that. So thank y'all for doing it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. More episodes coming soon. See ya. Give your team the gift of Pop Menu AI Answering, a simple solution for phones ringing off the hook. AI Answering handles calls 24/7, 365 days a year, so your staff can focus on in-person guests. Customize your greetings and responses, answer common questions, promote specials and events, and send follow-up links to ordering and reservations. AI Answering handles it all while escalating more complex conversations back to your team. Never miss another tasty revenue opportunity. Pop Menu, the marketing technology platform designed to make growing your restaurant easy. Discover more AI restaurant tools that turn your to-do list into an already done list by requesting a demo today. For a limited time, get $100 off your first month, plus lock in one unchanging monthly rate at popmenu.com. Go now to get $100 off your first month at popmenu.com. Be sure to tell them that Will from Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast and Schedulefly sent you. Y'all, this is a great business. I just told you what they like me to say. I will say that we have a lot of mutual customers at Schedulefly with Pop Menu. They all agree. Great product, great customer service, great results. Check them out, popmenu.com. This episode is also brought to you by The Giving Kitchen. Giving Kitchen provides emergency assistance for food service workers through financial support and a network of community resources. Since its inception in 2013, Giving Kitchen has served over 15,000 food service workers and awarded over $10.5 million to food service workers in crisis. If you or someone you know is a food service worker in crisis, please ask for help. thegivingkitchen.org, and again, that's thegivingkitchen.org. Y'all, this is a phenomenal organization. Jen, the founder, has been on this podcast. Jen Heidinger Kendrick, check out that episode to hear their full story. But if you know somebody or you need help, go to thegivingkitchen.org. Incredible, incredible organization and very responsive and has a wonderful mission. Check them out. Y'all, I am super, super thrilled to have my guest on here today. This is an interesting story from barista to CEO of a very fast-growing, very successful coffee business, BIGGBY Coffee. And if I'm not mistaken, The plan is to be a $1 billion business by 2028. But Mike, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This is great. It's a nice opportunity. I love doing this. Yeah, my story, next year will be our 30th year in business. My story is nuanced by the fact that I started as a barista in our very first store. So I worked, my business partner, Bob, opened that first store, and I was working there as a barista, and we ended up he expressed some interest in having me take a manager's role, in the business. And that wasn't really part of my future, I didn't think. And I was preparing to go back to graduate school at that point. And we ended up going for a long walk. And, at the end of that walk, we shook hands and agreed to start a company. And that's the company that is BIGGBY Coffee today. And we've been equal partners since 1998 in that venture, in that company that we formed formally then. But we've really been working together since fall of '96. And I like I enjoy my trajectory. I had pretty much every role in the business, from barista to shift leader to managers, different management roles in the store, and then an ops role, a marketing role, training, pretty much every facet of the business. I've been involved in it in an intimate level all along the way, and been in this current role now since oh boy, 2012, I think, as co-CEO with Bob.
Okay, so 90. So what you were going to go to graduate school? What happened like prior to that? You had just gotten out of college, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I graduated from college, and I took a straight commission sales job down in Houston, Texas. And it was
Okay. When did you graduate from college?
1990, well, technically 1994, although I had my college change my graduation to 1993 so I could be with all my friends at all the reunions. But yeah, I technically graduated in 1994. Um, and then I
Okay.
took this straight commission sales job, and that was a great breeding ground for entrepreneurship. You know, you, you
Mm,
get up in the morning and you sell something and you make some money, or you get up in the morning and you don't sell something and you don't make any money. All right. So
yeah, that's
straight
right.
commission jobs are, they're tough, but there's a lot of learning there. And so I did that for about a year and a half. Had some real success in that role. But then I came back, took a sales job in a Fortune 500 tech company, and was summarily fired about 9 months later. Just didn't fit that world. There's no way, and then I moved to East Lansing, working on a real specific research project. My mom was a teacher at Michigan State, and one of her colleagues invited me to come work on a project with him, and we uh, all in an effort to get ready to go back to graduate school. To get published and have that research piece under me a little bit, and so I took the job I went and applied at all the coffee shops in East Lansing in that day, and got hired at BIGGBY, and took a job as a barista.
Okay, so that was so this God, Bigby's been around for a long time, and there weren't. I mean, Starbucks was around then. There weren't a lot of other coffee shops back then. It was your partner, was it his store? Did he own it,
Yeah,
or did he start the first?
yeah,
Okay, got
yeah,
it. So you go there to work now. Okay, I got you. I want to say we have I mean, I'm like just a couple years younger, I guess. I graduated college in '96. I went and sold Cutco knives,
yeah.
full commission for like 3 months, and then I got a job at a bank at Nations Bank, which is now Bank of America. I lasted a little longer than you did, which is like shows that I'm probably less of a natural entrepreneur because I stuck it out for like 3 years, but I hated it. I didn't like, do it this way, do it that way. Everybody telling you what to do. I was like, "Dude, I can't, man, I'm never going to make it in this place. Like, I'll never make it in corporate America." And so I can totally relate to your path there.
Yeah, the
Um,
I probably would have lasted longer. They just didn't want me anymore.
yeah, right. Oh man. Okay, so you guys go on this walk, and you're like, "Okay, let's do this." I had this question, a lot early, which was like I didn't have an MBA or anything. I got into this is my second kind of go around in startup world, but a lot of my family's like, what do you like? You're leaving the bank to this previous business that we sold in 2007. You don't have any business, like you've never started a business. You don't have an MBA. Like, what are you thinking? I'm like, I don't like, I'm actually probably, maybe it's to our advantage that I don't have an MBA. I don't know. But did you get a lot of that as well? Or are you just,
Well, yeah, I didn't. And, my parents were incredibly supportive of me. And I think,
yeah,
I don't know what was going through their brains at that time. I think they were wrapped up in their lives too. Like my dad was an entrepreneur and my mom was teaching. And,
yeah,
that thing about my dad being an entrepreneur, where I grew up, my best friend's mom was a very successful entrepreneur. She won, the EY's Entrepreneur of the Year for Michigan when I was in college, which was
okay,
huge. And she was had a huge impact on me. And then my dad was an entrepreneur, and he had his own business for many, many years. Entrepreneurship where I grew up, it was I don't know, it was like a way of life in some ways. So many of
yeah,
my parents friends and friends of my parents of my friends were entrepreneurs, and so it wasn't this like crazy idea because so many people that we knew were doing it. In fact, I would say I had way more of that influence than the influence of going and getting a stable job. And so I think I kind of just
yeah,
came out of that environment. So when I decided to do it, there was no, they've always been supportive. And, I attribute so much of my ability to adapt and work within that space of entrepreneurship in terms of how they raised me. My dad's influence, and
mm.
my mom was always very supportive of that too.
Well, that's great to have that growing up and to just have the confidence and having a lot of that rub off on you. So, but so here you are, you have this walk, you go, okay, let's do this. That was a lot of years ago. I'm curious between then and now, like, were your goals then? Did you say, okay, was the goal, let's go build $1 billion business, or was the goal, let's go build 10 locations in and around East? Like,
Yeah.
what did you talk about that day in terms of short term and long term vision or goals, or like what you wanted to accomplish? And I say that, and I'm asking that because I want to get around to how you've changed a lot as a leader. I mean, I've watched you on. I've tried to come to this prepared. I know that you've taken a different approach now. You were more autocratic as a leader. You've written some books, so I want to get into all that. But here you are, a young man, the two of you. What was the vision then?
Well, I don't think that we had art an articulation for the long-term goal. I think one of the things though, where we match up really well, Bob and I, is our ambition and wanting
Okay.
to have impact. And so, I think I sense that, I think we sense that in each other. Um, the short term goals were survival at that point. It
Yeah.
was
Okay.
build stores, try to figure out how to make a living, and that was it. And we were able to do that. It's taken us a long time. I mean, this is 30 years of work, right? So, you know, I I I that's a part of the story that I really try to convey in the world, is the incredible amount of patience it's taken to grow this. And that it was never, I mean, we're high growth ish. Like we're growing, and we have a real nice track record of fairly consistent growth and so on. But we're not on a rocket ship, right? Like and so um it has taken a ton of patience to build, and that the end game has always evolved. But what I will tell you is, early in life, in my mid 20s, I somehow, well, the story goes, I had an opportunity to become, when I got fired from that tech company, I had an opportunity to become the assistant equipment manager of the Detroit Red Wings. I knew somebody who knew somebody, and at least I was interviewing for it. Not sure I would have gotten it. And my dad, I just tell my dad about it, and he had some expletives, but he's like, the stick boy, because that's what the assistant equipment manager is called in sort of hockey parlance, right? He's like, the stick boy, you should own the blanking Red Wings. And he walked away. And I was like, well,
Oh, wow.
yeah, right. I'm like, well, I'm never gonna play for them. That's we've got that figured out. So yeah, it would be kind of cool to own them. And that became my what we call a moonshot in our world. That became my moonshot. That became like the and so just from that moment, I was gonna have to grow something big, something very,
Right.
very big. And that's always been where we're headed. And it's certainly not a foregone conclusion at this point, but I think that, most people would think, hey, this guy's still got a shot. And you're so it's almost like I got a
Absolutely.
shot. So that is uh, when I talk about Bob and our aspirations and our goals and what we were working on together, uh, it was always going to be big.
So that's something you're trying to manifest. That's like Gary V. Um,
Yeah, I love
he's
them.
always wanted to own the New York Jets, and he'll probably will one day. But it's cool to have something that you put out there publicly that you're trying to manifest, and at minimum you're going to get darn close to it, or like you
Yeah,
said, still maybe you have an opportunity. You never know.
yeah,
I mean, it takes timing and luck, but time. I mean, I feel like every success story, I believe, is timing, luck, and hard work, right? So the two things you can't control are timing and luck, but you can control the hard work thing. But I mean, everybody that has a big success, I think anybody that does probably realizes if you are real successful, you've probably figured out that part of it's timing, part of it's luck, and the thing you can control is hard work. And you guys have worked hard for 30 years, and you've built a quote overnight success story over 30
yeah, yeah,
years, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and I also believe that, and I've always said, believe this way is that we do create our own luck to some degree. Like some of it's
yeah.
just random, but looking at opportunities that are in front of you, choosing the right path at certain moments, it does allow the opportunity to create your luck, your story.
You have to be willing to take some healthy, calculated risks to to manifest that luck for
Yeah,
sure. Okay, so well, first of all, I want to ask you a bunch of things. I want to ask you, but tell me about Life Lab.
sure. So uh, I'll try to give you the abridged version, and you can decide if you want to dive in further. But we uh, went through a very long and arduous process to get to our purpose for our organization, the why we're here, we're doing it, and that was to support you in building a life that you love. And so anybody that we come in contact with, whether it be a customer at the store, or an employee at the store, or a franchise owner, or whoever it may be, what we're trying to do is support you, right, in building a life that you love, and that's our purpose. Vision, we got into improving workplace culture, but we started to work through how we were going to build a company that would support anyone that it touched in building a life that they loved. And so the Life Lab team was established to do that, and to also work through and work on our vision of improving workplace culture in America. So that's where Life Lab came from. And we are 6 years in, and we're deep. We're very deep on it. But Life Lab's an entity within our organization that is focused on helping the organization fulfill its purpose.
So it's an organization within BIGGBY Coffee, and you're so you're really focused on. I really I want to dive a little deeper on this because you talk about the culture y'all built there for your team and your employees, but you all are you're trying to add value and spread that to the people you serve as well, to your customers.
And to the broader world. Yeah, we really are. And it's so much of my partner my business partner and I, back in 2016, we were lose inspiration around the company and strategizing on different things that we could do. And it became weird because it was everything we came up with was to grow the business. But for what? And if it's grow the business so that my grandchildren's grandchildren don't have to worry about paying college or whatever, that wasn't enough for us. That, adding one more dollar to tax return or one more comma to our balance sheet, that was we were fine financially. We were doing, we were doing well, and we were losing inspiration. And so the company was growing. It was successful by most measures. So then we started looking at each other. I mean, for years, for like 2 years, we were having this conversation of like, what in the heck are we doing? Like, what is this all for? Sort of this existential conversation. And that there's a story in our folklore around. I went on a camping trip up in northern Michigan on an island that you can only get to by boat. And I was there with my brother and my son. My son was 9 at the time, and we were going on this hike around this island. And I was walking on the beach, and I saw this couple, and they were sitting there making tea over a stove, a little stove, and they ended up being at our communal fire pit later that evening on Saturday night, and we're all, hanging out, making dinner. And this guy, Nathan Havey, ends up telling me all about his work. Well, me and my brother, all about his work in conscious capitalism. And, that was something that was very intriguing to me. I reached out to him later. We still have a relationship with him today. We still work together today with Nathan. But he walked us through a 2-year process of getting to our purpose. And once we had that purpose, once it was something that we were both like, yes, right? This is what we're doing here. All of a sudden, we were invigorated again, we were inspired again, we were engaged again. And a big part of that's growing the company as well as fulfilling our purpose.
Does growth then become the byproduct of fulfilling the purpose, not the main focus of the business?
Well, so here's, our vision is to improve workplace culture. So, we could have a cute little quaint little chain of coffee shops here in the Midwest and have this amazing culture, and nobody's going to care. And so growth is really, for us, it's about, if we can build the company we aspire to build, people are going to want to know how we did it. And then we can tell our story, and then we can have that conversation in the world around that you can be supportive and nurturing and loving to your people. You can support them in their own personal growth along with their professional growth, all at the same time of building an extraordinary business. In fact, we argue that treating your people that way leads to higher growth from a traditional business metrics perspective than the traditional way of leading. And so that's how we get to the growth's important, and growth's just important in general, like when you have a company. But that's why we want to grow, and we want to grow aggressively. And my partner has a vision of being interviewed in the New York Times, about how did we do this? How did you guys pull this off? And then we get to tell the story.
So y'all haven't been interviewed in the New York Times yet?
No, well, I did, but it was for something really boring. Yeah, I did. I do have a quote in the New York Times, but it was like, I forget what it was on. It was on something in relation to restaurants in the pandemic, or, something like that. It wasn't particularly inspiring.
But you want to be featured with what y'all have done with this amazing business, and how you got there and what happened. This is a really interesting story, man, because that's a challenge after so many years in business. Y'all have been at it. So in 2016, what's that? 20 years into the business, and you're kind of going,
Yeah.
We're at an inflection point. Like, what do we do? And it could have gone in a number of directions. And so conscious capitalism you said his name is
Nathan Havey. Yeah.
Okay.
Nathan Havey.
That gave you a bigger and broader purpose, and a broader vision. And it seems like, I mean, when you focus on, we're going to take incredible care of the people that work for us. We're going to take a different approach that has sort of been, the textbook management style for the last 50 years or whatever. And we're going to focus heavy amounts of energy into knowing and loving and care about the people that are on our team and what matters to them, not just at work, but what's happening in their lives. And that's all. I mean, to me, work and life they're not this separate thing. I mean, you have that. Like my buddies and I laugh. We're like, corporate speak, like where people, you're on like a WebEx or whatever, and people talk like in corporate, like they talk differently. They're like a different person. It's like this language they use and this inflection they use, and then they're not like that at home. We're like, why are people different in the work world? Like, why don't you just treat people that you work with the same as you treat your family and your friends? And it's a different way of looking at things, but you all have embraced this to a really high level with caring about, what's happening. So you know, if you're stressed from things happening at home, it's hard to just go, well, leave that at home. Like that's kind of been leave that at home. Like that doesn't belong here. Well, but most people can't do that. And it matters. And if you actually take the time to care about them and what's happening, then you're showing that you're intentional and that you care. Well, then what does that do? Then, well, the natural answer is, I'm going to guess, it leads to massive amounts of loyalty to your brand and much less turnover, which turnover kills businesses. It kills culture, right? And you want people to stay and believe in something that's not just, I want to make more money. I mean, there's a certain amount you have to make to pay your bills. And then from there, most people, Daniel Pink talked in his great book, Drive, about, autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Like those are the things that really get us and like get us engaged. And my guess is that that's a lot of what y'all are providing, and that you're creating this culture that people want to latch onto and want to be a part of. And then the growth and the balance sheet part and the financial part just happens as the byproduct of that. Am I reading
Yeah.
this right? Is that
Yeah.
like,
How I talk about it, what's the number one thing you hear managers talking about in relation to their people? And it's always accountability, right? How do we hold people
Yep.
accountable? And, my take on that is that you build relationships on trust. And you start to build trust. And by engaging someone as a human being and supporting them in their life and supporting them in their professional development and trying to working hard to help them achieve what they're about, you start to build this relationship and you start to build trust. Well, I know if someone's depending on me that trusts me, I'm going to go through hell and high water to get whatever I'm supposed to get done for them done, right? And that that
Mm-hmm.
that solves this whole thing about relationship and having a supportive culture and being nurturing of each other. That solves that whole issue of accountability. And I want to be accountable to, like, for example, my business partner. Like, I mean, we've got a deep relationship, and I mean, I'm not going to let that guy down. It's just, and what we're trying to do is create that within the whole organization. It's not just between leader and someone that works with them. It is everybody, right? Everyone builds these trusting relationships, and then therefore you have genuine, authentic engagements. You're just not going to let that person down, and therefore you have accountability. If you think you can build accountability by jumping up and down at somebody's head, that's crazy town. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
No, they're always going to be one foot out the door, or you're gonna cause massive amounts of anxiety and stress for
Yep.
them, which is going to cause health problems, which is going to cause less time at work, which is going to
Yeah.
cause, eventually they find, then you get the call, hey, I've taken an opportunity
Yeah.
elsewhere. So, well, yeah, I mean, it's a that's a big change from, what had worked. And I mean, had been implemented, at least in traditional management culture for so long. But boy, if you find a way to get people motivated and inspired and loyal and committed without just, it all being about like, okay, I'm going to give you a 4% raise or whatever, then, that's the business is going to thrive. There's almost just no way
Right.
around it, unless you just don't have a viable business model at
Yeah.
all. Tell me about, you've written some books. Tell me about your books.
Well, the first book, so I have a book series in mind. And the third book is a call to action around this whole concept that we're talking about here, which is legacy. And being a leader isn't about managing your business and your assets. That is management. That's not leadership. And leadership to me is about having a powerful impact on your community and improving the human condition, for lack of a better term. And that's the book I want to write, and that's the conversation I want to be having in the world. But I also felt like I couldn't just come out and write that book. Yeah, there'd be a whole bunch of arrogance, and there probably still is that heavy dose of arrogance in that. But So I decided I was going to write a series of books, and the idea was I wanted to demonstrate that I'd been through all of these stages myself, right? That I did do a startup, and we were, I mean, I was broke for a long time, and I lived through all of that, and that's the first book, which is right here. It's called Grind, and Grind is it's about the mentality and ethos in a startup. And so I wanted to write that book. I wanted to talk about my life during that time. I wanted to talk about my experiences, what I've learned. My whole business model is supporting other people in developing businesses, right? So yeah, I can say that I have some expertise in that area. And so I wrote that first book, and then that book takes you from the day you commit to a new business to your first days of positive cash flow. Then I wanted to write a book that takes you on this journey from what I'm calling the bootstrapping moment. And
Mm,
the book starts with that moment, and you go through this arc, and you have to evolve into a powerful leader of your organization. You have to become and that's what all of the things that you learned that made you successful as an entrepreneur, so many of those get in your way in terms of becoming a successful leader. And it's that transition.
mm,
But the book also takes you through to what I call irrelevance. And that is about people like Bob and I building out a team of people who will run the business day in and day out, and the business will continue to thrive whether we're there or we're not. And so
mm.
this is the second book called Grow right here. And that's what I cover. And this is a much meatier book, right? There's a lot more to that than this sort of mentality of startup. And then once you're irrelevant, now what? And the one of the primary arguments I make in the book is that we don't, as entrepreneurs, there's this obsession with build it, scale it, sell it. And that I don't have any problem with that. But there are other options too. If you can
Yep.
take your business on this trajectory where you go from bootstrapping entrepreneur to effective leader to irrelevant, when you're irrelevant, then you can have massive impact on the world at that point. And
Mm,
so you have all the resources, you have money, you have a extraordinary team built that's running your business. You got all the contacts in the world, right? You call somebody on the phone and they pick up, right? It's and so now what are you going to do with that? And that's what I'm going to lead into book three, which not sure when I'm going to start writing book three. I feel like I've got some more work to do in the grow phase or still yet. We're not 100% irrelevant. And also, we're not 100% sure that this thing is on autopilot, for lack of a better term. And so, I don't know that I'm ready to write that book, but that's the book project, in summary.
How many locations do y'all have at
We
BIGGBY?
just opened our 394th this morning.
Wow,
Thank
congratulations,
you.
man. How many of those are franchise
100%.
locations? 100%. Okay, got it. Um, and how many franchisees do you have?
I don't know that exact number. We have so many that own multiple units. I don't know the exact number of owners that we have.
But okay, and then where was the one that opened today? Where is it located?
Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot here. Just west of Midland. Yeah,
Okay.
it's in Michigan. It's about
I mean, your footprint is mid. Like how many states
well,
are you
we're
in
in
though?
13, but
13.
85, maybe even 90% of our stores are what I call within the Great Lakes states region. So any state that's
Okay.
touching a Great Lake, that's where we have some density. So Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan.
Okay.
And
Good deal.
Michigan, yeah.
And you've got I have not been yet, but you've got one here in the Charlotte area over in you're is it Matthews or Pineville? Like it's
I
one
think
of
it's
those. I think it's
yeah.
Pineville. Okay, I need to go. So you've got a franchisee there that has at least I guess just one, I
Yeah.
think, right? Is that the only one in
Yeah.
North
Yeah.
Carolina?
At this point.
Okay. Interesting. How do y'all find Mike, how do you find franchisees that you think will, because there's a lot more to this brand than just the coffee. So my guess is y'all must be discerning about who you let represent your brand, not just somebody that has, a check um, and then wants to be a franchisee.
Yeah, I mean that's a really nuanced question, and it's a great question
Yeah.
in relation to the business model, franchising. And what we've experienced, what we've learned over the years is it's really, really tough to know somebody well enough in a process, sales
Mm,
process, where you're going to understand if they line up with your values or not. And so we have struggled with that to some degree within the organization. And a big part, a huge part of the book projects is to give a resource to prospective franchisees and frankly our existing franchisees, maybe that we don't know that well anymore. This sort of the lowdown on how we think about the business and our values and so like that's it's more I think I would hope anyway that if I was going to be investing in a franchise and one of the co-founders wrote some books on business, that I might read those before I opted
yeah.
in. And so in some ways it's really about um, limiting or communicating what we do so people can self-select in and or
Mm,
self-select out. The self-select out is as important as the self-select in because when we get people
sure.
into our system that we're not aligned with, it's a struggle. And it's a struggle for them, it's a struggle for us. And just trying to avoid the struggle. And so that and so that's the answer on bringing people in that match up well with us. How do we find franchisees? A big, huge part of it is word of mouth. Just like any other business.
Mm,
We
yeah.
have franchisees that have brought in, I don't even 4, 5, 6 different family members, whether it's cousins or nephews, nieces, and so that's that word of mouth is a really big factor in our world. Our customer base also is a huge uh, factor for us in terms of finding franchisees. I mean, you walk into a store for years buying a cup of coffee, and then you start thinking to yourself, I think I might want to get into business for myself, and thinking about a franchise. You're like, well, BIGGBY franchises, and then so that's another huge part of it. The whole mass marketing thing is, I don't know. I mean, there's people out there that are working on solving that for us, but it's never, you know, buying advertising or doing stuff on social media to get franchises is a tough way to go when it's a cold start. You know, the cold start thing is
Yeah.
tough. Where you know when your uncle introduces you to the business, all of a sudden you go in with you know with some trust there, and you also have your aunt or uncle who are in the business that you can ask questions and you can and dive into it. So that's generally it's word of mouth and our customers.
Um, do y- I think about it like so? Do most of your franchisees are they are they all in where they're in the stores and they're owning and operating, or do you have people that are attorneys who buy a franchise and hire somebody to run it for them?
Well, it's again a great question. Our philosophy, and we actually had it written in our contract for many years. It was taken out maybe 3 or 4 years ago because our development team decided they wanted to pursue some other kinds of prospective franchisees that we were limiting with this clause in our contract. But the clause read, you had to spend 6 hours a day on the floor with an apron on for your first year. And
Mm.
and so you know that was we just believe that that was critical to understanding the business. And so we would never have signed a doctor to make an investment and hire a manager. Today, you know, we're targeting some um, you know, multi-unit food service franchisees of other concepts that, you know, the owner's not going to walk in and put an apron on and build store or operate stores. But in that scenario, we believe that the person has significant experience doing this exact thing. And so they're going to have a lot of that figured out. And so we've loosened that control, but for 20 years it was, you know, you had to put an apron on and you had to work in the store out front on the floor 6 hours a day, taking care of customers.
Well, that was my next question is do you see a lot? It seems like there's a lot more uh, momentum lately of people or groups of people that own three, four, five different franchises, and they become really good at operating 10 of one franchise, and they take that and then they buy into another one, and next thing you know they've got three or four or five. So that seems to be more common these days.
The model works,
um,
you know, and that's what I think these people understand, right? You know, if you're good, if you build a 10 unit a business on some brand, you know, and you move into another brand and you bring your approach and your philosophy to it and it works again. Like franchising is an interesting business model. And if you go to the top 10% of our owners, you know, go to our top 40 stores, those franchise owners will tell you just follow the system, right? You don't need to buck the system. It's not perfect, but you know, we're all working on it together and trying to improve it. But at the same time, like just follow the system. And I think a lot of times successful franchisees, they can do that in multiple brands. It doesn't have to be one brand, you know, and they plug in, they execute that franchise or's system. And by the way, you know, you sign with one company, you sign with another one, you're learning things in the second business that I'm sure you're applying to the first one, you know, and so, you know,
right.
there's value and diversity there, right? And not having all of your eggs wrapped up in one brand because if something happens to that brand, then you know you're at risk. So, you know, I
Yeah.
think that it's smart. I think you know we have those examples in our system, and I'll tell you, somebody that comes into your world as a franchisor that's a successful franchisee in another system, they're oftentimes easy to work with because they have the experience of what it took to build that first brand wherever they are. And a lot of times I think that's what happens too is you say you can saturate a market with stores of one brand and then you don't want to build stores 2 hours or 3 hours or in a different state. And so you start
Yeah.
looking at, well, okay, what else can I do in my market where I already have a team, where I already have, all my resources and connections built, and then they go out and find another brand. I think, I think it's just logical.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, so you said, like, if you go to your top 10%, you go, what are you doing? Well, we're following the playbook. We're
Yeah.
executing. Like, here it is. Just execute. Well, then that top 10% is probably, the perfect candidate to go, okay, well, I don't want to move. So I'm going to go to this. So anybody that comes to you that's a
Right.
top franchise in their brand is probably like, yeah, I mean, like, we got that one figured out. Let's give me your
We'll do it
playbook.
again.
We'll go
Yeah.
execute.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think that, if you've been building, if you got 10, 12, 15 units, you've been doing it for 15 years, like it can invigorate your people to launch into a new brand and do something
new
different.
challenge.
And so, yeah, we're not, I'm not overly controlling on that at all. I mean, we have one of our most successful franchise owners is now in a chiropractic franchise, investing in that. And we have some other franchisees that are doing other food service concepts. And yeah, of course, because you're doing that doesn't mean that you're going to all of a sudden neglect us. Like you wouldn't do that. You've built a heck of an asset with us. You're going to take care of it.
All right, y'all. It is time for a little mid-episode break. We're going to talk about Kickfin. Thousands of restaurants, bars, and breweries use Kickfin to tip out their employees instantly. No cash required. With Kickfin, tips go directly to your employees' bank of choice the second their shift ends. It's a really simple solution to a really big problem because if you're still paying out credit card tips in cash, it's costing you. Time-consuming bank runs and cash counting take managers away from work that matters. Cash is hard to track, which leads to accounting headaches, and it creates the perfect opportunity for theft, human error, and compliance issues. Bottom line, there's never been an instant secure way to pay out tips until Kickfin. It's an easy-to-use software that sends real-time, cashless tip payouts straight to your employees' bank accounts 24/7, 365. Kickfin gives managers hours back in their day, makes reporting a breeze, and protects your business from risk. Most importantly, employees love it. Restaurants can have Kickfin up and running overnight. Employees can enroll in seconds. No hardware, no contracts, no setup fees. Visit kickfin.com for a personalized demo. See how restaurants across the country are digitizing tips with Kickfin. All right, that's what they asked me to say, so I say it, and it tells the story very well, but I like to add this in. We referred a customer that we know and love very well, Sup Dogs, to Kickfin. Sup Dogs has been a customer for a super long time. Trust them very much with their opinion on these types of tools. They started using Kickfin. I asked Brett, the owner, recently how it's going. He said, Kickfin is perfect. It's going great. Exactly what we were hoping for. So there you go. Kickfin.com, y'all. Check them out. Well, I mean, it would seem like at a micro level or a local level, a lot of those top performing franchisees are in a weird way. I mean, they would be following the same path that you are taking people through with your books. So maybe, not again, you kind of become, I've got this team, they're crushing it with BIGGBY. Now let's go see if we can find, something else where I can have this team, but you're working on a bigger picture, not just the day to day of it. And hopefully you get to that point as a franchisee. I mean, that's probably most of them would
Be
like to
great.
do.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Is to build an asset, build wealth, and then use that wealth to, yeah, explore other businesses or do other things. We have a franchise owner that built a brewery, and it's like he always wanted to be in the brewery business. Well, there's not really a franchise in the brewery business, so he built his business with us, and he's leveraging that business to expand and go into the brewery business, which cool. That's what it's all about.
So tell me about first of all, I mean, I love coffee. Okay. So we'll start there. Like I drink, I don't know, 3, 4 cups a day. I drink it black. It's like a morning ritual, and I carry it throughout the morning, and I love it. I think of a coffee business, and I go, how do you how do you sell enough coffee to make enough money to be successful in this business? And I don't know a lot about the business
Yeah,
side,
well, I mean,
but I always wonder about that.
we're fortunate in our business that the margin is higher than restaurants. So, we're out of the gate with a higher gross margin. So we don't have to do the same revenue to support a retail store that maybe a QSR restaurant would have to do it, a burger joint or whatever. And so, that's um that makes it easier. And then, from there, the demand for coffee is extraordinary. It is it is the growth rate in specialty coffee has been phenomenal. And frankly, we just rode that wave. So, when we got in the business, it was a very small percentage of coffee drinkers that were drinking this quote specialty coffee. And so we've very much been riding that wave. And there's still a ton of white space. I mean, you wouldn't think there is because the Simpsons did a great job. There's a Simpsons episode where they're driving down the road and every retail bay is a Starbucks. I mean, it's hilarious and funny. And a lot of the world looks like that especially in the bigger media markets or the bigger towns. We opened a store in, I mean, it's Oscoda, Michigan, and it's 2,700 people. And the store
Yeah.
is just killing it, right? And it's doing great. And so, there's a lot of market out there where people don't have access to stop in and get a cup of coffee like this. And once the market matures, well, then we just have to compete, and be better than everybody else. And so, yeah, I mean, you are talking about having to generate hundreds of people into your retail store every day, and um, that can be imposing, especially in a brand new market where we don't have brand recognition and nobody knows who we are. But we try to build the model out for the franchisee that it's going to cost you more. I mean, it's just math. And so, you have to go in, if you're pioneering a new market, you have to go in with a different expectation around revenue and how long it's going to take to get to profitability, and you're going to burn more cash, and you got to be prepared for that. And if you're not prepared for that, then um, it's on you and on us because we didn't communicate that very well. So, it's been a magical ride for 30 years in terms of being in part of an industry that's just been growing like crazy. And sometimes I feel like we've missed a boat to some degree. We've got 400 units, and that's a lot of units. But sometimes I wonder, had we been smarter, had we been better, how much bigger could we be? And I think every entrepreneur faces that. Maybe other than the Jeff Bezos and the people that get lightning in a bottle. Those are extraordinary stories that don't happen very often. But for everybody else, I think we all think that, geez, if we just done stuff a little bit better and been a little bit smarter, how much more quickly could we have grown?
Still a lot of white space, so as you said, so that's awesome. I mean, do you? So I think of like the one here, Pineville. Like, so if I come to you and I go, okay, I'm really interested, and I check all the boxes for y'all. Do you help franchisees find a location? And I ask that question because that seems to me, as you mentioned, you got to get hundreds of people in there. Boy, you got to nail it with the location, right? I mean, you could get it slightly wrong and still draw people in because you're doing such a great job on executing and the brand has value and everything. But it seems like for a coffee shop in particular, like with the traffic you got to get, you really got to nail that location.
Well, I think it's much more important when you're pioneering a market.
Yeah.
But I also
Yeah.
have there's a lot of nuance around this location thing right now. And I'm not sure that the consumer today is pulling into your coffee shop because they drive by and see your sign. I mean, I think there's some degree of that. Today, what I do when I go to New York City or I go to, some place that doesn't have a BIGGBY, I'll just go on my app and I'll say coffee near me. right? And Google, and then boom, up will come 4 or 5 options, and I go down those and I click on one, and it doesn't matter where that thing is. It doesn't matter if it's some C location somewhere from a traditional retail perspective. I'm going to find it, right? And I'm going to hit put it in Waze, and I'm going to follow the blue line to take me right there. So, I think a lot of what's going on in the world right now from a location perspective is changing, and I think it's changing dramatically. And so, I don't want to sound ridiculous here, but like making sure you've got the perfect location at Main and Main, or however, whatever your criteria is. I don't know that that's as important. We have an experiment coming up here in the next couple of months. We have a store opening that, I would look at it, and it's actually a friend of mine, and we've been talking a lot about it. And it's not at a traditionally a good location for us. But he believes that it doesn't matter. He's going to be marketing on social media, and people are going to be, going, "Oh my gosh, we've got a BIGGBY now. Cool." Because it's in a market where we have a pretty significant brand recognition. And so they're going to be like, "Oh, amazing. There's a new BIGGBY opening." And they're going to pull it up and type the address into their GPS, and boom, they're going to come. And so we'll see. We're gonna prove that out here a little bit coming up. And I've always, we've got a little bit of a different business model. We've never really gone after Main and Main and expensive properties. We've always tried to be in what you might call B locations, where rent is somewhere around 2,500 or $3,000 a month, as opposed to 5 or 6,000 a month. And that has allowed us to have a lot more flexibility in relation to pursuing real estate. Our overhead traditionally has been very low in the industry. We've always focused on that, and trying to keep the overhead to the point where the customer doesn't need to generate as much revenue to return. And so that does give you more flexibility too around real estate. And I could talk about it for a half hour in terms of why we're doing it that way, what the value of that is, because there's a ton of other benefits to not being focused on Main and Main at 5, 6, $7,000 a month.
Well, I would imagine part of it's knowing who your audience is and who your customer is. I mean, the flip side of the Main and Main is you get the great location, you're paying a lot of rent, so you darn sure better execute. Whereas you have a little bit more margin at the, as you said, the sort of the
Yeah.
B locations, and if you do execute well, so you have less pressure. I'm imagining being a franchisee, and I'm like, okay, I'm not paying $6,000 a month. I'm not on Main and Main. Great, I'm only paying 2,500, so I'm not under this like immediate anxiety and pressure to hit this giant real estate nut every
Right.
month. So I can focus very much on calm, patient, long game, build brand, execute everybody that, and focus on what's happening inside my four walls, which I can control, which is what is the experience that we provide to each guest that comes in, and do we make it memorable so that they go, I want to go back to that place. I really like that. And
Or I
then
want to bring somebody else with
or if
me.
they're, or if I was going to say, or they want to bring somebody with them, or they go spread word of mouth, or if they're a review person, they give you, because to your point, if you go coffee near me, there might be one that's 2 blocks away. You're in New York, 2 blocks away, and it has a 3 stars, but there's one that's 6 blocks away that has 4.5. What are you doing? It's not even like that answers
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's what I mean,
And
right?
that
Like,
that 4.5 is like something. I mean, you can't quote control it, but you have much more influence over that than you do over anything else. Is like once they're in here, what is that
yeah.
experience? And that is more important than anything. Is how do they feel when they walk out those
Yeah.
doors? How do we make them feel?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Am I hitting in
we
this right? I
talk
mean,
about
I'm
that.
just guessing. Is it
We
like,
talk
yeah,
about customer experience all the time. It's one of the major throughputs. How does that customer leave feeling? And I hear um, business owners sort of complaining about these reviews and the stars, and it's like, because they're thinking about it from the perspective of when somebody writes a bad review, right? I've always thought of it, isn't that a great opportunity to show how great you are and then have all these positive reviews, and then that leads to more customer acquisition and being able to provide that experience to more people and so on. And like that's just kind of a shift in mentality. Like, if you're conservative and you're worried and you complain about a negative review, I guess, but that doesn't seem to be the kind of mentality you need to have to grow a business, in my mind.
You get a negative review, it seems, I mean, you can respond to these reviews, right? Like, it seems like that, like you said, I mean, that's an opportunity to turn that into a positive
Yeah.
experience to show that you're engaged. I mean, and you do, like, you see that and you go and you look, oh, they got a one review, but then the owner spent, two paragraphs explaining, like, look, okay, like, this is what happened. This is like, we own it. So you can be accountable and you can own it and turn it into an opportunity to publicly own that situation, offer something to that guest, and then do that in a public forum, which
Beautiful.
it reflects a very positive light on
Yeah.
you.
I mean,
I would think. I mean, that's what you got to turn that
yeah.
into an
Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah,
And having to be
you're always going to get that. You're always going to get somebody, even if you're going to get people that maybe didn't even come in. They're just mad and they just want to like, But it's rare, and when it happens, you can. There's like it's like to your point. It's how you handle it's all. That's all you can
Yeah,
control there, right?
yeah, and I mean, we all know there's a whole big dose of crazy in the world too, right? So when I go to a restaurant and they've got
Yeah,
a 4.7 rating and a bunch of positive reviews, and then there's this one whack job negative one, like I just ignore that.
yeah, exactly. No, yeah, if you're doing it right, you're just gonna get enough stars and enough good
Right.
reviews. And if you just keep your head down and focus on just executing. Now, the difference I always find, and this is why I think, look, when we got Schedule Fly going, I thought I went in a restaurant one day. And then I started doing this. I mean, I've been doing this podcast for like 10
I
years,
know.
man. We've done over
Congratulations, by the way.
500.
What's it, 600
Yeah.
episodes now?
It's like, this is like
Okay. Yeah.
527
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that. And we've had like 700,000 downloads, and that's growing. And, you know, when I started, I mean, I had to beg people to come on this podcast because everybody's like, what the hell's a podcast? But I thought, like, at the time, I thought, I want to own a restaurant one day. And then I started talking to all these people. I'm like, oh my God, like the things you have to master, and like all the skill sets and the ability to deal with like all these different things that can happen any given time, like metaphorical fires, literal fires, freezers going. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that, but I really admire people that can. But I think about, you know, handling. I mean, one of the biggest things I've noticed is that people that are really good in this business, Mike, they're very good at dealing with all of these, like, you can call them negative things, but the inevitable things that are going to happen if you're in hospitality. It's really challenging, and you have to handle it calmly and consistently and just turn these things into an opportunity. And I get that as an owner, as a franchisee. The big thing I always admire so much is, how do you find people to work for you who, and this is where the leadership thing comes in, who will execute the way you would as a owner, or the way you would want to lead them to execute. That's where you've got to be. I think, I would imagine, you really have to understand who you are as a leader and how you inspire people, through, and this is probably why you had the 6 hour thing, like through setting an example, through leading by example, through not asking people to do things you haven't done yourself or wouldn't do yourself, through empathy and intention and kindness and caring about them. This is a set of skills that, to me, if you're good at what you do in hospitality, you've probably developed a set of skills that are transferable to almost any other career, is my take on it.
Well, I think, there's, again, I mean, we could spend an hour on this topic too. I think I've always told my franchise owners that if you execute the system and you embed the system inside of your store, your employees will be better at this than you are. And I believe that firmly.
Thus making you irrelevant
Yeah.
in a way, like you want them to
Yeah.
be.
And
Yeah.
then the
Okay.
other thing that I want to react to in terms of what you said was this concept of, and I hear it constantly. It's like this reoccurring meme in the world around finding good people. And my take on that's very, very different. And that is that we don't find good people. We create an environment that good people want to be a part of. And when you do
Yes.
that, you are not worried about trying to find a needle in a haystack. In fact, you don't like when people come into your world, if you're looking for a superstar, it's going to take your business over and run it for you, just the way you would run it. You are on a fool's errand. And so what you
Hmm.
want is you want good people, conscientious people that come in, are willing to learn the system and love the environment, love being there, love their colleagues. And at that point, you're going to have a line of people at your door wanting to work within your company if you pull that off. And so to me, that's leadership. That's a big part of what my second
Mm.
book is all about, right? Is creating this environment that people love to show up to, and they want to perform and they want to be accountable, and they want to be a part of something exciting. And we experience that, right? I have friends that own businesses, similar in scope to mine, who are out trying to find C-suite executives and so on. And they can spend a year or a year and a half looking for, some particular role to fill. And, we don't struggle with that. It's when we post, when we tell the world we're looking for this kind of a person, generally speaking, we just get hit up with a ton
Yeah.
of interest. And so, it's just, again, it's a little bit of a different perspective. And I this concept, is it Jim Collins that writes about the bus and getting the right people on the right seats on the bus? And then my response to that is, but first you got to create a bus that people want to ride on.
Right.
Like people want to pay money to get on your
You get it.
bus and they want to ride with you. Like,
Yes.
and then, yeah, like,
Yes.
I agree with Jim Collins. I think his points are brilliant, but I think he misses that one piece that you got to create the bus people want to climb on and ride with you. And when you do that, you're not worried about finding people. You're not worried about finding good people. You're going to have plenty of people interested and available and wanting to come work for you.
I think you nailed it, man. There's to your point, there's a grocery store chain. I think they're out of Florida called Publix, and they opened near us a couple years ago. And some of my LinkedIn videos, I actually go sit there and work. They have this like little area upstairs where you can go work, and I go there because the culture there is just really
Renowned.
good.
Yeah.
And so I hit, see, I didn't even know. I can tell you this, my so about it. See, I just went and I'm like, I've been telling my wife, I'm like, I want William to work. He's 17. I'm like, I want him to work there this summer. Like, I want him to apply and work there because I literally anytime if we need something, Lauren knows. My wife, she's like, you want to go? I'm like, yep, I'll go. I love going to Publix. It
Yeah,
makes me
great.
happy. It's a great. People are nice. They look you in the eye. They ask you if they can. Like, I mean, it's just these little things. But to your point, I think you just nailed it. But because they do that so well, I want my kid to be there and be a part of that and be surrounded with that. Like I can't even imagine saying that about any other grocery store I've ever experienced. But that brand, like they get that so right, at least the location near us. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're aware of that's something they've scaled. I mean, it's
It's
like
crazy. It's
night
beautiful.
and day. It's not what you would expect when you just go to a grocery
Right.
store. But I'm like, it is more than a store. Like I tell my wife, I'm like, it is an experience. And that's because of the people there. So I want our son to be a part of
Right.
that because I think that's freaking awesome. So,
Yeah, I have a similar story.
um,
There's a deli here in town. It's famous. It's called Zingerman's. And
oh
and
yeah,
so
I've heard of
yeah,
Zingerman's.
I mean they're a great company.
Don't they do like yeah, like they have people come in from all over the world to
Training,
learn
yeah,
their
yeah.
philosophy. And
In
yeah,
turn, they've
okay,
got something called Zing Train, and and
yeah.
I haven't been through any of the Zing Train stuff to this point, but I still intend to. Just never carved out the time to do it. But my both my older kids, I have a 18-year-old and a 17-year-old. I was like, I want you guys to work at Zingerman's. I want you to work. And my son opted for another job that he loves, and so that's good. But my daughter applied and got a job there. Well, Zingerman's, at least from the outside looking in, and everything I hear in the world is everybody wants, and people want to work there, right? They want to be a part of that. And the fact that my daughter got hired, I was super proud of her. And she goes in and she's working there, and I pay attention because she talks about it. And you know what? The employees are not enamored necessarily with Zingerman's. I mean, it's not a, and I don't believe that people, everybody in Big B Coffee is enamored and loves Big B Coffee and working there. But I told her, I said, listen, I don't know if this is true or not, but I don't think you're ever going to find another company that's going to be as conscientious, thoughtful as Zingerman's is. And if people are complaining about this, she doesn't. She likes it. But if people are complaining about that job, boy, I feel sorry for them, because when they leave Zingerman's and go get a job somewhere else, it is going to be a hot mess for them.
Which is when they'll appreciate it more and probably want to come back. Like, yeah, if you don't like that, it's probably because you haven't worked anywhere
Right.
else, right? Like it's your first
Right.
job, and you don't know different, and then you go somewhere else, you're like, ooh, God, never mind. Like that place is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, well, I want to respect your time. We should probably wrap this up. I think you and I could talk for a long time, and I do want to talk to you more. And I think you said you're coming to North Carolina in May, right?
Yeah, May 21st, I believe. I'm coming to Charlotte. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm there. So
Let's do it.
let's go over to the Big B's in
Yeah,
Pineville
let's do it.
and hang.
I
Would
think we already set that up, didn't we? Or no? I asked somebody in my world to reach out to you to try to set that up, because we talked, or we texted about it, or wherever it was. So I'd love to
yeah.
do it. I think it'd be great.
What are you coming to Charlotte for?
Our chief operating officer is based in Charlotte, and then our chief financial officer is based in Hilton Head. They always come here, right? They're always flying to Michigan, or they're always flying to Ohio. And
Oh,
so, for years I've wanted to go visit them and make an effort to spend time with them there. So I'm going to fly into Charlotte. I'm going to have dinner with Cordell, who's our chief operating officer, and then I'm going to get up in the morning and drive to Hilton Head and have dinner with Aaron, and then I'll get up the next morning and fly out of Savannah and come home.
connect me with your COO. If he's in Charlotte, I'm right here. I'd love to
The
meet him.
legend. Oh yeah, you can meet with him. I'll put you together. I think he'd enjoy that. He's an
Yeah.
amazing guy, and it's a lot. The whole work remote thing, and you hear leaders out there negatively experiencing the remote workplace. I'll tell you what, for us, we have been able to attract talent that we could never have gotten. We could never, neither of these two people, I mean, I've never asked them, but they wouldn't have moved. They're not, our CFO is not moving from Hilton Head to come live in Lansing, Michigan. There's no way. Nothing against Lansing, but she's there. She's got a beautiful home, and she's lived there for a long time, and she was excited for this opportunity. And remote work gave her that opportunity, and also gave us the opportunity to have somebody with that talent level in our world. And I mean, it's remarkable. And Cordell's the same way. His name's Cordell Riley. I'll introduce you for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to meet Cordell. In fact, so I'm in this studio when we have somebody that's local. We have them. I mean, like I'd love to have him come in here and we could record an
You
episode and
should.
tell his story and just do it like we do it in person here in the studio. And this is an awesome studio that my buddy owns. And yeah, please introduce me and let's definitely hang out when you're in town. And I have like tons of other stuff I want to ask you
We'll do
about,
it
but
then.
we'll wrap for now and we'll do it. Yeah, we'll do it over some coffee, man. Thank you for taking the time. And by the way, I have to call out Gary Dybel,
Oh yeah.
one of your franchisees. He's got 4 locations. He loves your brand. We recorded an episode. He's a great dude.
How'd you get connected
And
with
so I want to
Gary
just,
in Charlotte?
well, I got connected with Gary because he is he must be one of your top franchisees because he's smart enough to use Schedulefly to schedule his staff. And so that's how I got connected with Gary, because I saw, like, he signed up, 4 locations. And when somebody signs up for Schedulefly, they do a 30-day free trial, and I get a text. And I have a flip phone. So it comes to my flip phone, and I call him, and I'm like, hey, thank you. And I get to know him. And then he was telling me about BIGGBY. And I was like, dude, man, you want to come on the podcast? And so that's
Yeah,
how I
Gary's
met him. And then
special. He's special. He's got a
I
heck of
started
a
seeing
story.
you on LinkedIn. Yeah, and he talked about you, and then I started seeing, and you do a great job of telling your story, and you're making these cool. I'm like, man, that guy looks freaking cool as heck. I got to see if I could get him on here. Like, I just like how you share your story, and you're creating content, and you're just, storytelling's just such a big part of building a really successful brand, and you're great at it.
Well,
So
thank you for that.
that's why
We're 12 episodes into a podcast we're working on, so I've got much respect for you. And what I told my team and the woman I'm working on it with closely, I said, listen, if we're not doing 100 episodes, I'm not starting, because the first 20, 30, 40 are going to be horrible. You know,
Yeah, you learn. It's trial and
yeah.
error, and it's A/B testing and learning your style and
Yeah,
everything.
it's
Like it's
complicated, and same with the
yeah,
messaging on social media and all of that. I still watch 50% of my stuff and cringe. It's just like, oh yeah, but you just got to keep going. And it's 30 years from now, if I did this for 30 years, like I did building BIGGBY, I mean, I'm probably gonna be pretty good at it in 30 years. You can't expect to come
yeah.
into a new
That's right.
venture like this and 8 months later
Mm-mm.
be proficient and good at it. Like you've got, I mean, how long did you say you've been doing this?
Really, over
Yeah,
10
right.
years.
And so,
Yeah.
and you're very good at it. This is a very natural conversation. It is, you're obviously a pro, but I'll bet you weren't this good at it your first.
Oh no,
you know,
God,
yeah, your first
no,
20
not at
episodes,
all.
you probably go back and listen to and you're like, oh gosh, but so yeah, I still it's a work in progress. I'm committed to it. I'm not walking away from it because it takes so much time. And that's one of the things that I think people go into business or just life in general, like stuff takes time. It just does to get proficient.
It does. It does. A buddy of mine wrote a book called The Hockey Stick Principles, and he talks about, he uses the hockey stick as, he talks about the blade years, right? So you're a hockey guy, like, he talks about, like, when you start, the blade years are this flat period. It's long, right? It's a long time before you hit that inflection point and get to the quote hockey stick growth. And a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, they give up somewhere on the blade years because they get impatient, or they don't think they're good at it, or they just with some combination where you're just like, forget it. But many things, if you stick with it long enough, just through, it's like compounding, right? Like, it just takes a while, but once it starts to compound, it starts
Yeah.
to take off. And like, that's why 30 years at BIGGBY, and, you're 400 locations, but then, like, to get to 800 will take, not, a
Yeah.
third
Hopefully
as
not
long as
30
it took to,
years.
or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It'll take 5 years or whatever it is, but you have to, you're right. I mean, yeah, keep doing it. What's the podcast? What is it called? And what's
It's
it about?
love and leadership, and it's a workplace culture and engagement with leaders, and trying to learn from companies that are doing interesting things. Trying to bring that to people, and so it's great. I enjoy it, and I don't mean to be derogatory towards our work up to this point, but it's still it's we're so new, and we had
Yeah.
fun. And I think that's a good sign. We had a good time. We enjoyed it, and we're sticking with it. We're not going to walk away.
All right. Last thing I'll say is this. I'm going to try to get, um, y'all connected with the New York Times. And this is literally, I'm not making this up, like an hour before we did our podcast, I got off the phone with a lady from USA Today, and she is writing a story about people that use flip phones. And on LinkedIn, a lady that knows me, that knows I have a flip phone, this lady at USA Today said, I'm looking for people that use flip phones. And this lady that knows me follows her and tagged
You're
me.
kidding.
And this lady called me. She's like, "Can I talk to you about this? I'm a tech writer for USA Today, and I'm writing this story about people that are using flip phones. And I'm like, sure. So we talked for an
Oh,
hour.
nice.
But the reason I'm telling you this is to set up the fact that she used to write for the New York Times and, knows people there. So I'm going to call her to be like, man, I got this guy I just talked to and like this awesome freaking coffee chain. Like, let's get him connected with New York Times because that's this guy's goal is,
Yeah.
your partner wants to be. So maybe she can make a call and get somebody to, because you got a great freaking
Thanks,
story
man.
and like
Thank
they
you.
should be telling
Thank
your
you.
story. So we'll try, it's worth a shot,
I know
right?
we're trying to
Like,
end this, but I'd love to hear your take on why the heck you use a flip phone, because I aspire to use a flip phone, but there's just so much utility in that other device, like,
well, I tell you what, we'll talk more when
all
you
right.
come, but the article comes out on like the 15th, like next
Oh,
week or
good.
whatever. So she's and it went from like I think she talked to me a few minutes and then she realized I co-own and run a tech business, yet I use a flip phone. And so we got in this whole story about our business and it was really
That
cool.
is cool. Can you ping me with that
Yeah,
article when it
so
comes out?
I'll do it. And you know what's crazy? I think did Wyatt leave? Yeah, he had to leave. I got off the phone with her. I drove to the studio. I walked into the studio and there's an intern here named Wyatt. He was one of the people setting this up when we got here. And he goes, I hear you use a flip phone. And I was like, well, yeah, I do. He's 20 years old. He goes to Williams College. He's home for a break because he's like ahead of schedule or whatever. And he goes, well, check it out. And he pulls a flip phone out of his pocket. I'm not kidding. Like 20-year-old dude. He's like, many people my generation are just like, forget it. Like we're going back to flip phones because we don't want to be this like constant dopamine, hit and all this kind of stuff. So we'll talk longer about
Yeah, I
it
want to. I
when you
do.
come.
I
But
do.
I,
I aspire.
I will definitely send you the article. It's been 4 years this June that I'm off of the iPhone. I had an 11 and now I've had this Kia Ceera for 4 years this June. So, dude, thank you so much. What a great conversation. I really enjoy getting to meet you and getting to know you, Mike. And you're a very inspiring dude and your leadership style is awesome. And I love what you're doing. So I'm super thrilled to have this opportunity and definitely stoked to connect when you're here in Charlotte and get me connected with your guy here, man. I'd
I
love to meet
will.
him.
Thank you for the opportunity to engage, man. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. All right,
Take care.
man.
Will.
That's a
All
wrap,
right.
y'all. All right. Have a good one. See ya.